And let's get started on our September technical training meeting. For the meeting today, we are going to talk about our basically our standard for duct leakage testing. So Dalton's going to take us through what the field guide says about duct leakage testing, and then I'm going to review what is basically some proposed guideline changes to clarify what our duct leakage testing standard is. So that's the main purpose of the meeting today. Before we get into that, just wanted to go through our normal housekeeping stuff, our monthly production stuff, and then we'll get into the meat of the meeting. So the first couple things, there are, zoom in a little bit there. The BPI pilot is going on. If anybody did get approved for their pilot stuff, if you have not already, you need to be in communication with Wade. The pilot ends at the end of September. We have a very tight schedule, so please reach out to us if you have any hopes of participating in the pilot. Does anybody have any questions on the BPI pilot? I'm hearing nothing. So the other thing we just had, I calendared this. So if you do have QCIs that need some experience doing NEAT MIA audit stuff, we're going to do some audit training in April of next year. And then we're in the middle of this right now, just our annual weatherization training. So those are the trainings we have calendared. Any other training opportunities anybody out there is aware of that this group should know about? All right. Let's jump into our production. So if I can make this one work. So here's our production for the month of August. These two charts show the crisis completions, and if, like on the left here, the light blue was the prior average. So on average in August for the last 4 years, there were about 16 crisis completions. This last month, we received 41 crisis completions. I think there's a little bit of a spike because the Housing Authority of Utah County is currently focused on finishing anything that has been in their pipeline for a while. So I think that covers or accounts for some of that spike, but we've also noticed an increase in crisis completions. So thank you guys for serving those clients who have those crisis issues. And then I think this is kind of a total, let's see. So crisis completions, total completions. I don't remember what the difference was here. 4-year average WAP and crisis. Oh, yeah. So this is all of our stuff, and this is a combined weatherization and crisis completions. So just to give you an idea of how many completions total between weatherization and crisis. On average, we've been turning in about 51, and this last month, the total combined, we turned in 76. So there's definitely a spike in completions between weatherization and crisis. The next slide covers the, oh, there it is. Covers the weatherization production. And so on the left, this is just the kind of the month. This just shows the total of every agency's total monthly goals. So in August, if we added up all of the goals for each agency, we had a projected goal to complete 42, and we completed 35. So didn't quite meet the goal. You can see we've got a trend there. We're almost meeting the mark. And then the chart on the left, or sorry, on the right, shows a running total. So, you know, combining last month and this month, we should have a total of 76 turned in, and we have turned in a total of 63. So we're a little short. Encourage you guys to do all that you can to meet the monthly goals that you've set for yourselves. I wanted to give kudos to Utah Community Action. They have met the goal that they set for themselves both last month and this month. And there was another agency. I made a note. Oh, Uinta Basin met their goal, their production goal for this month. So thank you guys for all that you're doing to meet your goals. And as you can see, we're going to need to exceed our goals a few months in order to catch up. So any questions on production? All right. I've calendared, so our next technical meeting, just again, is always the first Tuesday of the month. So the next one will be October 2nd. Some of you may be off muzzleload hunting or elk hunting, but we will have the meeting anyway. Not sure of the topic on that one yet. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about briefly before we get into the main topic is something from my training. As I met with the first two groups, we've talked about radon a little bit, and it's been about, I don't know, 50-50. It sounds like some agencies are on top of this and some agencies are not. So just quickly, if you have not already done this, you need to do this as soon as possible. As of July 1st, every one of your clients is supposed to receive this, the Citizen's Guide to Radon, the EPA's Citizen Guide to Radon. If you don't have that, just do a search online for it and you can find it and download the PDF. It is up to each agency to print that in whatever format you guys want to print that, but every single one of your clients is supposed to be receiving this probably during the application process or whenever you guys send out your client education information. Every one of your clients is supposed to get a copy of that, and every one of your clients is supposed to be signing this document, the Radon Informed Consent document. After this meeting is over, it'll probably be later in the afternoon, but I will send out a copy of this to everyone. So if you don't have it, I don't remember if there's a link somewhere on our website, so I'll just send out a link to everybody today. You need this form in your application, probably. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be in your application, but you need to have, every one of your clients has to sign this. This is the language DOE gave us, and as you can see, it says it can be added to existing release of liability and waiver of claims forms. So if you have a bunch of other forms, say lead or mold or whatever, this could be added to that. You don't necessarily have to have a separate signature on this form. So if you had one form that covered lead, mold, radon, and a few other things, and then there was one signature at the bottom of all of those, that works. Or you can make a separate form for this and get an individual signature. But just be aware of this form. I've been covering it in my class, so at the end of this week, everybody should have read through this statement, but be aware that your clients are signing this saying, I'm aware that weatherization may result in increased levels of radon. Mechanical ventilation may counteract those increases. I have received the EPA's Citizen Guide to Radon, and radon-related risks were discussed, and I've chosen to go forward with weatherization and accept all risks of injury or damages. So anyway, please make sure you're doing that. While I'm out monitoring this year, I will be verifying that that's part of your process, but it was a requirement as of July 1, so if you haven't done it, get make sure it's in your process as soon as possible. Anybody have any questions or concerns about that? All right. Well, if you guys don't have anything else, we'll jump into our main topic for the day. Dalton, would you like me to turn the screen over to you?
Can you hear me, Matt?
I can, yes.
Okay. You are now the presenter. Shay. All right, can you guys see the field guide?
I can. Hopefully others can too.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. Okay, so we're going to be in section 8.14. We're going to be going over section 8.14.1, 8.14.2, and possibly 8.14.3. We'll see where we end up. But and it's just, it goes over the procedures for evaluating duct air leakage. And I'll read this first statement under 8.14. It says, duct leakage is a major energy waster in buildings where the ducts reside outside the home's thermal boundary in a crawl space, attic, attached garage, or unconditioned basement. When these intermediate zones remain outside the thermal boundary after weatherization, duct sealing is usually cost effective. And so we wanted to go over our process for testing duct leakage and kind of set a standard so you guys know when to use, when you should be using a duct blaster or when pressure pan is sufficient. So this first section right here, it's got just finding duct leaks using touch and sight. I'm not really going to go over that section. You guys know kind of what to do there, and that can get kind of time consuming, and we want to more put your attention towards diagnostic testing of the ducts. So we're going to just start off right here on pressure pan testing. And it says pressure pan test can identify leaky or disconnected ducts located in intermediate zones with the house depressurized by the blower door to either 25 or 50 pascals. Matt Turner wanted to make a point that we're just going to go with 50 pascals. Correct, Matt?
Yeah,
we just wanted one standard, and so in our program we're just going to use 50 pascals for the depressurization of the blower door. And it says make pressure pan readings at each supply and return register. If the ducts are located within the thermal boundary, typically pressure pan testing isn't really necessary if the following steps are taken. Returns are sealed in the CAS, basement, or crawl spaces, or for health and safety reasons. Verify that the duct zone pressure does not change when the air handler is operating. And we'll get that second bulletin, kind of section 14.3 covers that process of verifying that the pressure change does not occur when the air handler is operating. But pressure pan testing is required when ducts are located outside the thermal boundary or when returns are part of the building structure. So even in those homes that you have all your ductwork inside the envelope, if they're using returns in the building structure, in the wall framing or pan flooring or something like that, they need to be tested. Let's see. Returns are part of the building structure such as pan floor, joists, or wall cavities. For comprehensive pressure pan testing, use the following guidance. So step one is install a blower door and set up house for winter conditions. Open all interior doors. If the basement is conditioned living space, open the door between the basement and the upstairs living space. If the basement isn't conditioned living space, close the door between the basement and upstairs. Then measure and record the zone pressure of the basement with reference to the conditioned space to confirm that the conditioned space and basement are separate spaces with a substantial pressure difference between them. Step number 4 is turn the furnace off at the thermostat or main switch. Remove furnace filter and temporarily tape filter slot if one exists. Be sure that all grills, registers, and dampers are fully opened. Temporarily seal any outside fresh air intakes to the duct system. Seal supply registers in unoccupied zones that aren't intended to be heated. An unconditioned basement or crawl space, for example. Open attics, crawl spaces, and garages as much as possible to the outdoors so they don't create a secondary air barrier. Step 8 is connect hose between pressure pan and the input tap on the digital manometer. Leave the reference tap open. With the blower door manometer reading -50 pascals, place the pressure pan completely over each grill or register one by one to form a tight seal. Leave all other grills and registers open when making the test. Record each reading, which should give a positive pressure. If the grill is too large or the supply register is difficult to cover with the pressure pan, like under a kitchen cabinet, seal the grill or register with masking tape, insert pressure probe through the masking tape, and record the reading. Remove the tape after the test. Use either the pressure pan or tape to test registers and grills in a systemic way. I'll just play this. Do you guys want to watch this video on pressure pan testing? Or do you guys all feel like you're good on the procedure and process of testing?
We feel pretty good about it.
I thought you can go either way on the video. The video is worthwhile. I thought number 5 was one to kind of think about, especially if your agency has started using makeup air for its ASHRAE strategy. You gotta, when you're doing your post test, you gotta make sure and seal that off. And then number 7, open your attics, crawls, and garages as much as possible so that those buffered zones don't create a secondary air barrier. I think that's one that I've forgotten a lot, so be aware of that. Make sure that you're doing those things when you're doing these tests.
Yep. Does anybody have any other insight on the testing process or any questions about doing a pressure pan test as far as the procedure? Okay, let's talk about the Pressure Pan Duct Standards. And I think ours might be a little more strict than, well, we'd like them to be a little more strict than what's in here, but we'll have a discussion about that. I'll just read what's in the field guide. It says, if the ducts are perfectly still with no leaks to the outdoors, you won't measure any pressure difference. During a pressure pan test, you won't measure any pressure difference during a pressure pan test. The higher the measured pressure reading, the more connected the duct is to the outdoors. If the median pressure pan reading is 4 pascals or more, and or if one reading is more than 8 pascals, duct sealing is usually cost effective. Following duct sealing work, no more than 3 registers should have pressure pan readings greater than 2 pascals. No single reading should be greater than 4 pascals, or if your own, or follow your own more ambitious standard. The reduction you achieve depends on your ability to find the leaks and whether you can access the leaky ducts. The best weatherization agencies use 1 pascal or less as a general goal for all registers. Examine the registers connected to the ducts that are located in areas outside the conditioned living space. Unconditioned spaces containing ducts include attics, crawl spaces, garages, and unconditioned basements. Also, evaluate registers attached to stud cavities or pan joists used as return ducts. Leaky ducts located outside the conditioned living space may lead to pressure pan measurements more than 30 pascals if these ducts have large holes. So I think this is where Matt Turner may want to talk about our standard that we want to put in our guidelines.
Yeah. Let me
Go ahead, Matt.
let me.
Do you need to scale the screen back?
I think yeah. You guys see my screen again?
Yep, I can see it, Matt.
Okay. So, last year on our monitoring, I did not find a single instance of duct testing done and recorded in the client file. But I think it was somewhere around 40% of the homes that we visited during monitoring should have had duct testing done because they had duct outside the envelope. For the last 2 years, I've been, this has kind of been an extra credit thing, but if you look at our field guide and you look at our guidelines, duct testing has always been required when it's needed. And so this year, I'm going to be looking at it more closely, and whenever it doesn't happen, I will be indicating that it should have happened, and we'll start tracking that more closely. One of the things to watch for, especially in some of the newer homes that our clients are, or our housing stock that we're serving is kind of moving into more homes with cantilevers and things like that. So make sure that you're keeping a close eye on those buildings because that's where we missed a lot last year. With that, I want to make sure that we are very clear and we have a very clear standard on when the duct leakage is required or the testing is required. And then also, based on your testing results, we need a very clear standard on when you're required to actually do something. And as you can see, as Dalton's going through this, there's kind of some different guidance on, this is a good standard or you kind of should do something here. But so what's on the screen right here is this is a proposed change to the guidelines. So our field guide has a bunch of guidance for us. But for example, the one that just said, you can do this or you can use your own more strict standard. Well, since our field guide is something that we can't really change but every couple of years, our more strict standard will have to go into our guidelines. And so I've made some proposed changes to guideline section B9.8L, which says duct leakage testing. And I just wanted to cover those right now. The next time we will make changes to our guidelines, unless something comes up where we have to make them immediately, we're not going to make any more changes until December. We're going to try and keep those at kind of a twice-a-year cycle. So anyway, so if this works for everybody, then these changes will go into the guidelines in December. But I'm asking you to start implementing them right away. So with that said, the first one is just basically a standard for duct leakage testing. I realize how time-consuming a duct blaster test can be. And so one of the things we'd like to do is allow auditors to do pressure pan testing in a home. And if they find that the home does not have much duct leakage, then they don't need to get their duct blaster out. But with that, we've got to set a standard for, you know, when do they need to get the duct blaster out, and when is it okay to say, you know, the duct system is pretty tight here, it's not necessary. So these are the highlighted stuff, really covers the meat of the proposed changes here. And I can send out this document. I will send this document out after this meeting, so please review it. You know, give me any feedback about it, any concerns, and also just while we're talking, if you have any concerns. But with that, so let me just read through this. It says, duct leakage to the outside shall be, and this is a change too. I think it said should, and we would be changing this word to shall, making it just a more clear requirement. So duct leakage to the outside shall be measured on all homes with duct outside the conditioned space. Duct leakage can be measured using either pressure pan testing or duct blaster testing. Duct blaster testing is required on site-built homes when the average pressure pan test readings are greater than 2 Pascal. So before, it's been on a mobile home, you can use duct blaster or pressure pan, whichever you choose, and that's because the audit will actually allow you to use a pressure pan test, and you can evaluate the duct leakage using a pressure pan test. The audit will not let you evaluate, you know, for a duct sealing measure based off of a pressure pan test for a site-built home. But if you want, on a site-built home, if it has, you can do pressure pan testing, and if the average is below 2 Pascals, then you can say the duct system is tight and I'm not going to evaluate for duct sealing. And therefore, it's not necessary for me to get my duct blaster test out and use that piece of the audit to evaluate further. So we're taking the 2 Pascal. There's a handful of there's guidance in our field guide. There's some guidance in the home performance book. There's some guidance that came from John Tooley, and we've looked at all of that and tried to come up with just something that seems reasonable for our program. 2 Pascal at -50, an average of 2 Pascal leakage at -50 Pascal of pressurization represents about 4% leakage in your duct system. And so at that point, we are starting to get into an area where there should be an opportunity to do some sealing. So that's why we're using 2 Pascal. So let me just continue on. So pressure pan testing. Pressure pan testing shall be conducted in accordance with Field Guide 18.14.1, pressure pan testing, which we just reviewed. All pressure pan testing shall be conducted while the blower door depressurizes the house to -50. And so this is where the field guide says you could use -25 or 50, and we're just having to clarify it here in our guidelines. If the average of all pressure pan readings is greater than 2 Pascal in a mobile home, the auditor must evaluate for duct sealing using the energy audit. So you would actually be required to evaluate for duct sealing as a separate measure if the average is above a 2 in a mobile home. If the average of all pressure pan readings is greater than 2 Pascal in a site-built home, the auditor must measure the duct leakage to the outside using a duct blaster test. So in a site-built home, if it's above 2, you got to get out your duct blaster. And then duct blaster testing. So now that we're doing this more precise test on a site-built home, we need a standard to determine now when do we actually have to do something about duct leakage. So the duct blaster testing shall be conducted in accordance with Utah Field Guide 18.14.2, measuring duct leakage to the outdoors. If duct leakage to the outdoors is greater than 8 CFM per 100 square feet of conditioned floor area, the auditor must evaluate for duct sealing using the energy audit. This 8 CFM per 100 square feet of conditioned floor area, it comes from it's actually double the energy code right now. And this one, it's open for debate. If you guys have other suggestions for a standard there, I'm open. We just need to set a standard. We need to say, you know, once we have a certain amount of leakage, then we actually are going to, we must evaluate for duct sealing, and we need to do something about it. So I picked I like the standard that they have in the energy code because it references the size of the home, but the current energy code says if you're building a brand new home, your duct has to be so tight that you have less leakage than 4 CFM per 100 square feet. So in our homes, this still 8 CFM per 100 square feet is still fairly tight. So anyway, questions, concerns, thoughts on this as proposed changes?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
So with the NEAT, if you add in the duct blaster, you need the duct operating pressures, and I don't think we've had any training on that specifically.
Oh, so for the duct operating pressures, we did a bunch of training last year. One of the best things for that is in the, I think we stuck it in the guidelines. Your agency, this is Brenna that's speaking with Utah Community Action, and your agency actually has a diagram showing the duct system in relation to the furnace, and it has a couple of different locations on that. And it's important to note where you're actually taking the test for the audit. While Dalton continues with the rest of what he's going to cover, I'll pull that up and show you where that guidance is before, you know, toward the end of this, if that will work.
Would static pressure testing go for that?
Yes, that is. Did you say static pressure?
Yes.
Yeah, that is exactly what we're doing. You're basically you're looking for the total. I think it's total external static pressure, but I might be wrong on that. So I'll pull it up. It's important to note when you're measuring static pressure to make sure that your furnace is within its manufacturer's parameters. There's certain places that you measure, but then when you're measuring for the audit, you're measuring in a different place. So I'll pull that diagram up here in a minute, and we can talk about that more. So, any other questions? But yeah, I appreciate that comment. That is one of the downsides of this is, in addition to running your duct blaster, you also have to measure your static pressure of your total system so that the audit can evaluate it properly. So, all right. But yeah, basically, go ahead.
It's been a while since I've done a MIA audit for a mobile home, but does it allow you to get duct sealing money off pressure pan numbers somewhere?
Yes, it does. See if I can open up one really quickly. So under the MIA, if you evaluate duct sealing, and I'm sure this is tiny on everybody's screens, but if you check that box to evaluate duct sealing, you get 4 options, and the very last one is pressure pan measurements. And exactly what Brenna was talking about, the same thing applies here. You have to do your duct operating pressures or your static pressure of the system. And this is combined. It's oh, actually this says supply, and it's before and after on that. But if you'll notice, so this is a MIA audit, and there are 4 options there. The last one is pressure pan measurements. If I get out of here and go into just a NEAT audit, if you evaluate duct sealing, there's only 3 options. You don't get to do the pressure pan here. But so really the major change here is that you can use a pressure pan in a site-built home to show that the duct is tight enough that you don't need to evaluate it. That's the biggest thing or the biggest change. Hopefully it will allow us to go in and say, look, most of the homes, there wasn't enough leakage and that's why we didn't get our duct blaster out. But we're also having to establish a clear line where if there is a certain amount of leakage, now we have to get the duct blaster out. And if I do that, then we actually, on the NEAT, you have to get your supply and return static pressure so that you can evaluate that.
Yep, and for that's you're going to have to start recording your pressure pan results. So
yeah, and that's just a quick example of what that might look like is just something like this. And so we're going to have to document, which rooms, the locations that were tested and what the pressure pan results were for each of those locations. One of the things that to keep in mind, this is all of your supplies and your returns. So you've got to test all of your returns as well. And then what we're saying is that once you have tested all of them, if you look at the average of all of them combined, if that is above a 2, then you're going to have to get your duct blaster out. If it's below a 2, then you can say, no duct leakage, no further duct leakage testing required, or, there's not a big enough opportunity to do duct sealing, something like that. So, that makes sense? Hopefully. All right. Dalton, were you still in the middle of some stuff? You want me to turn the screen back over to you?
Yeah, I can go over the duct blaster section.
All right, let me turn the screen back over to you. And I'll see if I can find the stuff I was talking about.
Let's see, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, I
Okay.
can.
So in section 8.14.2, measuring duct leakage with the duct blower, the duct blower is the most accurate common measuring device for duct air leakage. It consists of a fan, a digital manometer, or a set of analog manometers, and set of reducer plates for measuring different leakage levels. Pressurizing the ducts with the duct blower measured total duct leakage. Using a blower door with the duct blower measured leakage to outdoors. There's a couple videos. We're not going to watch them. There's one on connecting to the air handler and pressurizing test setup. I'm just going to go through these steps right here. Measuring total duct leakage, and then there's 2 different type of duct blaster tests. You got the total duct leakage and the leakage to outdoors. We went through these last year during our technical trainings that we held a year ago. But I'll read through each of these. It says the total duct leakage test measures leakage both indoors and outdoors. The house and intermediate zones should be open to the outdoors by way of window, door, vents. Opening the intermediate zones to the outdoors ensures that the duct blower is measuring only the duct's air tightness, not the air tightness of the ducts combined with the air barriers like roofs, foundations, walls, or garages. Supply and return ducts can be tested separately, either before their handler is installed in a new home or when their handler is removed during replacement. Follow these steps when performing duct air tightness test. Step number 1, install the duct blower and the air handler to a large return register, either using its connector duct or simply attaching the duct blower itself to their handler registers with cardboard and tape. Remove the air filter. fill all supply and return registers, open the house, basement or crawl space, containing ducts to the outdoors, drill a hole into the supply duct a short distance away from the air handler and insert the manometer hose. I don't know if you guys remember last year when we did it, we tried putting the reference hose in one of the supply registers that was a little ways away from the duct blaster, and you can't quite get the pressure up high enough, so you got to make sure you're only a short distance away. And then connect the airflow manometer and measure fan with reference to the area near the fan. Check the manometer for proper testing. Digital manometers require you're choosing the correct mode, range, and fan type settings. There's a little diagram right there. I think everybody's pretty familiar with how to do that. If you guys just reference this section if it's been a while, or give me or Matt Turner or Wade a call. It says turn on the duct blaster and pressurize the ducts to 25 pascals. Record the duct blower airflow. While ducts are pressurized, start the air handler and move outward, feeling for leaks in the air handler, main ducts or branches. After the test and associated air sealing are complete, restore filters, remove seals from registers, and check air handler. Measuring duct leakage to the outdoors. So that test, the first one, the total duct leakage, all you need is the duct blaster. This one you're going to do in conjunction with the blower door, the leakage to the outdoors. It says set up the home in its typical heating and cooling mode with windows and outside doors closed. Open all interior condition areas to one another. Install a blower door configured to pressurize the home. Connect the duct blower to the air handler or to the main return duct. Pressurize the ducts to plus 25 pascals by increasing the duct blower speed until this value is reached. Pressurize the house until the pressure difference between the house and the duct is 0. Read the airflow through the duct blower. This value is duct leakage to the outdoors. Do you guys have any questions on using the duct blaster? Okay. This section 8.14.3, those of you guys that have already been through the training this year, the class that I've been doing is balanced airflow. On the Mad Air 2 prop that I have, I've demonstrated for you guys this measuring house pressure caused by duct leakage. It's a pretty good test to give you an indication of what's going on in if you do have leaky ducts and whether it's return or supply. And I'll just run through the steps. I'll just read this section. It says the following tests measure pressure difference between the house and outdoors caused by duct leakage. Try to correct the difference greater than 2 pascals, positive or negative, because of the air leakage through the building enclosure that the pressure difference creates. And to do the test, you close all windows and exterior doors, turn off all exhaust fans, open all interior doors, including door to the basement, measure the baseline to the house, the outdoor pressure difference, and zero it out using the baseline procedures described in blower door testing. So you baseline it out just like your blower door, and then turn on the air handler, measure the house to the outdoor pressure difference. This test indicates the dominant duct leakage shown here. So if you do this test and you zero out and then you kick on your air handler and your house with reference to outside goes positive, you have more of a return air leak is your dominant leak. Whereas if it goes negative, it's your supplies on your supply side that has the majority of the leakage. It's just another tool in your tool bag to help you diagnose what's going on in the home. But that's all I had, Matt.
All right.
don't know if anybody has any questions on duct blaster testing, or if they thought of more about the standard that we're proposing. Please comment.
So here I did find, I do have this chart in our guidelines, but it's not answering Brenna's question, at least not where I found it. In answer to Brenna's question about, static pressure, this chart's in the guidelines under the section where it's in B9, where you talk about when it's appropriate to install an ECM motor. And we use the chart to basically say you want to measure your total external static pressure, which is B plus C. And that is where you'd measure to see if it is appropriate to add an electronically commutated motor. But when you are taking the measurements for your audit, so the audit says you need the supply operating duct pressure and the return operating duct pressure. I did confirm with Mark Turns, who was on the team that wrote the NEAT audit, that you're going to take your supply reading at location A, and you're going to take your return reading at location D. So A, you're going to be after the coil, you're up in your supply, and D, you're before your filter. We probably should clarify that in the guidelines. It would be most appropriate to clarify that in our field guide, but that's going to have to be at some point down the road. So maybe as part of these proposed changes, I would include some information about this to help auditors know, or to remember exactly how to evaluate that. So, and then the same thing about the MIA would be at location A. Go ahead.
I just had a question. So as far as manufacturer specs, though, it's going to be C and B.
Yes, correct. Yeah, the manufacturer specs they want the total external static pressure as well, so it's always going to be C and B. And that's the thing to keep in mind, like, especially for auditors, if you're going out, you're collecting your total external static pressure, which is C plus B. You need to, if you have duct leakage, so if your average pressure pan is above a 2, then you're also going to have to measure A and D so that when you get back to run your audit, you'll be able to run it appropriately. So, yeah, thanks, Jesse. Did that answer your question?
Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Cool. Any other questions or concerns about this at this point? If not, the ask right now is to just go out and implement this. I'll send out a copy of these proposed changes, but try it. My biggest question is whether or not 8 CFM per 100 square foot is a good standard, so please try that and give us your feedback. I feel like 2 pascals average is probably pretty good based on a few different sources, but the 8 CFM per 100 square feet for your total allowable leakage to the outside, I don't know where I sit on that. So let us know what you guys are finding, please. I think that was it. Oh, hang on, there's a question. How do we pay for the action to correct balance issues in zones caused by HVAC equipment? Dalton, you and I were talking about this a little bit. What were your thoughts on that question?
If it's backdrafting your water heater, you could probably tie it into your health and safety. Could you, Matt? If it's causing a health and safety issue.
Yes, yeah, and the health and safety guidance expressly says that you can address duct leakage in the CAS as a health and safety measure. So that's one way to deal with it. What other scenarios are there? Because I know you've been just talking about balancing pressure.
Still, and even if it's not backdrafting your water heater, it still can be increasing air leakage, you know, in rooms if it's pressurizing some rooms, whether it's pressurizing or depressurizing rooms. So it still would be wise to address it. And I don't know if you'd have to do that as a NAM or under like light heat weatherization, or
I am pretty comfortable with addressing, if it's going to affect any venting, you can address it as a health and safety measure.
yeah.
If it's going to affect your, if it's going to increase the amount of air that's leaking out of your home, then you can address it as part of your infiltration reduction strategy or your air sealing strategy. We could definitely make that expressly clear at some point, you know, with a adjustment to the guidelines, but I feel like those pressure imbalances for the most part are going to fall into one of those two buckets. It's either causing a health and safety concern, or you would be fixing that pressure imbalance in order to make sure the home is nice and tight. So do you guys feel the same on that, or any other concerns about that? All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks for the questions. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and end there. Thanks for your participation and attendance, and thank you guys for all you guys are doing. We really appreciate it. One thing I stopped doing a few months ago, but it's still always on the table. If you guys ever have any suggestions for these meetings, like for topics, just shoot Dalton or I an email. We're always looking for a good topic, so if there's something you guys need some help in, we're happy to cover it here. So.
Yeah, or if you guys feel like you're really good at a certain topic, you can teach it too.
Yeah, if you want to volunteer.
We can line that up.
We would love some other voices on this.
Feel like you're an expert in a certain area.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. You guys have a great day.
Thanks,
Thank you.